In Judaism, conversion is not a profession of faith. It is a commitment to enter a different way of life. It is to accept the distinguishing characteristics that are part of a new identity. These characteristics will bind the convert to other Jews while lessening the ties that the convert has to the non-Jewish world. Conversion means accepting new boundaries between what is allowed and what is not allowed. Sometimes these new boundaries correlate with specific objects. We will now listen to discussion on how material culture relates to Jewish identity.
Okay, so my question for you is this, is when you're dealing with a person who is either, say, Jewish that's trying to strengthen their sense of Jewishness, or dealing with someone that is a potential convert that would like to become Jewish, what is the role that you feel Jewish things or material objects play in forming their sense of Jewish identity?
What you're speaking about are Jewish ritual objects, really, and you can see a lot of them around my office for candles, for the Hanukkah, for Hanukkah. They're very important. On my door is a mezuzah, which says that we believe in one God. You have observant Jews and people who just, they'll go to shul, they'll go to temple. And then you have non-observant Jews, but they love the ritual. They'll have a Passover Seder plate. They'll have a Hanukkah and light the lights on Hanukkah. They might, once in a blue moon on Shabbos, on Shabbat, light the 2 candles, a minimum of 2 candles. It's very important. To the Jewish people, to have a temple, to come together, it's a wonderful thing. But we say our temples are our homes. So all the things, like even these are little dreidels. These are funky looking dreidels for Hanukkah. But all of these ritual items are what, for Jews, keep our identity going. You can see my Kiddush cup there for wine. And I remember one person that I was starting to teach for the conversion process. And she actually said to me, I said, may I come to your home? Let's put up a mezuzah. She said, on the doorpost outside, which identifies that you're a Jew. She said, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want my neighbors to know that I'm going to be Jewish. Of course, that stopped the conversion process immediately. But for us as Jews, these ritual objects are the way that we identify ourselves in society. I'm not wearing one right now, but I wear a Magen David. I wear a Star of David. All of those things. Even for the Jews who don't go to temple, who don't belong to a synagogue or a temple, they will have all those items. They will light candles and do different ritual things at homes with their family.
I think that someone's identity is wrapped up both in experiences and material objects. And just to take the second part of your question first, when people are looking to enhance their experiences, to deepen and enrich their experiences, and to feel sort of connections that they either hadn't previously connected to or are dormant, being in community, doing Jewish things, reading Jewish books, for example, or Jewish articles, is very important. Experiencing life on Jewish time is very important. And I think that what one uses to do those things is also very important. That I think that there is an inherent value in a Kiddush cup, a tablecloth, a space, an oral tradition, A-U-R-A-L, a musical tradition, which penetrates very deeply the coding of our character. So while one is certainly aware that circumstances can change at any time, making the most of who we are in the space that we're in, with the people that we're with the things that we have, is very, very important to engendering a sense of importance, not only in a contemporary situation, but also across generations. A very important part of Judaism is Ledor Vador, generation to generation. And as things are used from generation to generation, whether it's an outfit for a bris or a wimple that's being used, an outfit or something that's tidying the Torah, in addition to like a Kiddush cup or something else, I think those take on great resonances for people.
If we start with one of the first objects that you mentioned books. Do you think that when it comes to sense of identity, do you think uh, books, it's not so much an issue of the specific knowledge that might be contained in books, but rather, a couple of minutes ago, I think that you said perhaps kind of anchoring your place within kind of Jewish time, as you were talking about?
I think it could be. I think that there, obviously something to be gained from knowledge and intelligence and
Mhm.
reading. At the same time, if you see a particular copy of a book you used to read when you were a kid, or a particular edition of a book that you like, things come flooding back. And I think that books in that way operate like music does, or like albums or CDs do. That I think that there is both the information to be gained from the book, let's say, the context in which to put that book, and how the book and its environment has caused us to feel, or the times that we associate it with it, or the experiences or the people that we have in the connection that we have surrounding that book. So I think it's both and.
So, one of the things I think you just alluded to is the issue of whether or not things are often kind of embedded with memory and are almost psychological tools. Could you kind of elaborate more on
Well, I
that?
think that that's true. I think that anything that we have, the places that we are, the things that we touch, the experiences that we have, and surrounding them with material objects is very, very important. So I think that in addition to whatever existential experience that we have, that there's an inherent value that we place in things that then themselves transcend the the worth that they have to us by utility, and they remain to us psychologically, nostalgically, in memory, in many other different ways.
So, if you were dealing with someone at kind of in a pastoral capacity, and they were trying to more strongly connect with their sense of Jewishness, one of the reasons that you might kind of advise them to acquire Jewish things might be so that they're creating memories as they go along.
Right, to create memories and to establish traditions, not only for them, but to make the investment in the life that they're living. And I think that that's very, very important. That if one begins to extend beyond one's own reach, then one not only situates oneself in a particular way, but also contextualizes one's own life in a larger continuity of Jewish existence in this particular case.
Now, when you say investment, what does that mean?
Investment in the life that one is having, and also an investment in what perhaps future generations and the regard that they will have for the material objects that you're acquiring.
So,
To
one,
receive a book from my grandfather,
Mhm.
to receive a Kiddush cup from a dear friend, all of these take on things that are much larger than the thing itself.
So within whether you might say a Jewish thought process or a Jewish mentality might be that you are creating memory when you acquire things, and perhaps a Jewish way of doing things might be that you're trying to pass it down to future generations. I mean, that's almost implicit, in
Right?
the acquisition.
Anything itself is a vessel, and it's awaiting, whether it's Jewish or not, it's awaiting a direction, a complexion, a history that we ourselves are going to infuse in it by our attention, or consequently by our neglect.
So it wouldn't be surprising then, for example, if a woman, when she were to buy candlesticks, were to do so kind of with the idea of one day I'm going to pass these down to one of my daughters or one of my granddaughters. Is that kind of what you're alluding to a little bit?
I think that's true, and I think that on the same token, one has to be careful not to venerate the object itself. And again, going back to recognizing that that might be an ideal, that if one is embarking on a Jewish identity or a Jewish sense of Jewish life, and to use your example, receiving or buying candlesticks with the hope that one is going to use them passionately, willingly, delightfully, and then pass them along, at the same token, Judaism teaches to not bind up one's identity exclusively in the candlesticks. That Judaism doesn't become just the sum of the experiences that I think I'm having with those candlesticks. For if the candlesticks themselves get misplaced, broken, ruined, then one still has to regard one's Jewish experiences and identity as authentic, even without the object itself.
So the objects themselves are really, would you say, access points then?
They're
As
portals.
far as, you said portals?
They're portals.
Okay. Can you tell me more about what you mean by portals?
They are ways in to, they are shorthand, they are a grammar for thinking about Jewish life. They are ciphers for Jewish life. And again, the truest object that we have is the text. And we allow ourselves to become one with the text. And a distant second would be all of the objects that we have, and allowing them to articulate, to inform our aspirations in Jewish time, with Jewish people, in Jewish spaces, and yet to not become the sum total of those things.
Are there certain objects that you feel on a consistent basis might be more helpful than others? Like if you were dealing with someone, like I said, either in a Jewish person who is trying to reconnect or connect for the first time with their Jewishness, or a potential convert, that you would say, this object versus this object versus this object might be more helpful?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't have a regimen of objects that to people would be more important than others. I think as people embark on a renewed sense of identity, or a regained or particularly new sense of identity, it's the things that one does initially that I think takes on the greatest reverence and reverence and sense of worth. If one puts up a mezuzah in one's house, one's going to remember that first mezuzah, first books or two that one reads, the first shofar that one buys, the first Kiddush cup that one gets, the gift of a talit that a friend gives. All of these things resonate, as opposed to saying, well, a talit is of more value than a Kiddush cup. I think it matters on how one uses it, how one acquires it, and one's regard for it in terms of what it is in the context of the tradition.
And so this kind of the story of acquisition, as far as the personal relationships behind that story, are very important.
That's a big part of it. Mm-hmm.
For Jewish converts, material objects are portals that allow them to live on Jewish time. Objects have an inherent value that transcends utility. They are empty vessels waiting to be filled with memory as Jewish converts enter the Jewish life cycle and begin living a Jewish life. These objects open the gateways to the Jewish values and experiences that build identity. There are many different objects that can be used to connect Jewish converts to the Jewish community. Here are a few.
Tanakh, Tefillin, Kippah, Talit, Magen David, candlesticks for Shabbat, Kiddush cup, shofar, Seder plate, beans for Havdalah, Mishnah, a cup for ritual washing, Allah, menorah, Sidor, tzedakah box, Jewish cookbooks, Hamza, mezuzah,
Shema Yisrael Adonai